Well, hey there, welcome. We're going to be having a conversation about dating. My name's Ellis. I'm one of the pastors here at Chapel Hill. This is Julie. She's another pastor. This is Gunnar. It's another pastor on our team here at Chapel Hill. And we know there's a ton of questions out there about how should Christians date? What is the purpose of dating? And we thought we'd take some time today to address some of those questions. Each of us have spouses. We've been through the dating game. We've made it out the other side of it. Yes,
Thank the Lord.
Yeah, but we all have experience in our own right. And so I want to kick off and ask either of you, whoever wants to jump in, what do you think is the purpose of dating?
That's a great question. You should answer that.
Yeah. So that's a great question, because I think that dating can be different things. For some people, dating is hanging out. For some people, dating is more romantic. For some people, dating is about finding a spouse. So I think the purpose depends on which of those things you're dating for. And for some people, it can just be fun. Like if you're just dating to hang out with people, that can be fun, and the purpose of that would change. For some people, dating is to find a spouse, and then the purpose of it would change. So,
Yeah.
How do you think the casual dating thing jives with being a believer? I mean, depending on what that shape, think about realistically what dating is like these days. I say that like I'm old. I'm not old.
You are old.
Yeah, I'm an old soul. But anyway, you know what I mean? How does that jive, the purpose?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that we believe that each person is an individual created by God, bearing their image, and so we need to treat them that way. So I think at the heart of dating, we have to have in mind that we have to respect the other person and love the other person as someone created in the image of God, and not treat them as an object to be used and disposed of. So I think whatever we say about dating, we can't treat it as this like I can go through person after person after person and just have fun, because I think effectively you are treating them as objects if that's the way you're going about it. So I'd say there has to be some sort of higher purpose to it, and I wouldn't necessarily say the purpose has to be to find who you're going to marry, because, and I think this is important, singleness is a legitimate Christian option.
Yeah.
So we just to say that up front, we can talk more about that later. But I do think that the purpose of dating, I would say, is to form us and shape us and make us into people who are more like Jesus. And honestly, I think that's the purpose of everything in life. So that'd be how I answered it. Wait, do you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just say, I think if you're dating with the view that you want to start a relationship with someone, then obviously the purpose of dating in that view would be moving toward marriage, right? We believe that God ordained marriage. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And so we are kind of seeking who that future spouse would be, getting to know them, them getting to know us, seeing if we share those values and if we're the right people for each other. And then from there, taking that step toward marriage, if that's what God calls us to.
Yeah, great. What about, there's a lot of questions surrounding, is it okay to date non-Christians? If you're a Christian, what are some of you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know that for me, first off, I met my spouse when I was 19. Met Joey when I was 19, and we got married 2 years later when I was very young when we got married. So I was a teenager through my dating years. And for me, I found that having the boundary of dating people who are like-minded in my faith was very important. That there is a lot of life experience that couldn't be shared if they weren't of the same belief system and worldview as me. So for me personally, that was a boundary that I placed.
Yeah. I think there's a danger too, we've kind of talked about in the past, this idea of flirt to convert or missionary dating. I think there's a danger in that because we can't really force God's timing. We don't know when God's going to grab hold of somebody's heart and draw them to Jesus. I've heard wonderful stories of people who got married and their spouse ended up coming to Christ, and that's a wonderful thing. But I don't think that we can essentially force that or force God's hand. And we certainly can't expect to change people. I think if you're trying to get into marriage as an institution and your goal is to change the person you're with right out the gate and they become your project, and that can be unhealthy. And just think about how many things we do in our lives that really come out of our values and our beliefs.
Yeah.
You're gonna essentially, there's a good potential for you to run into a lot of conflict over the years.
One of the best pieces of advice that I got given when I was dating was to reject the Christian test. I think sometimes you think it's like, are you a Christian is kind of the test, and if they say yes, then it's like, check, I can date you.
They're in.
But I think if you are someone who's following Jesus with your whole life, your whole heart, everything that you do, that's what we're called to, is to be sold out for him. You don't just want someone who checks the Christian box. You want someone who's equally sold out for Jesus, equally loves Jesus with all they have and is willing to sacrifice everything for him. And so I'd say reject the Christian test, just the check in the box, and go higher. Look for someone who's really going to support you and encourage you and drive you further forward in your faith and in your relationship with Jesus. So I wonder, do you guys have some other maybe pieces of advice that you were given or advice that you'd like to pass on?
Man, it feels like it's been so long since I've dated anybody. And I know that for me, I grew up here at Chapel Hill, but I went to a school where dating was a very serious thing. Like even in high school, a lot of people were dating with the intention of maybe finding their future spouse. So, when you're 17, that's a lot of pressure. And something that somebody told me right before I started dating Joey is you should really enjoy the person that you're dating. They should be something that you have fun with. And that was something that I've been missing from a lot of my previous relationships. It makes it sound like I had a ton of previous relationships. I didn't. I dated an appropriate amount as a high schooler.
Define appropriate.
You don't have to get into the numbers.
I'm not going to get into numbers or names or anything. But for me, actually having fun and laughing and being a big part of my relationship with Joey when we were dating was he was my recreational companion. We'd go play Frisbee together. And so even learning what life was going to look like together was really important. So
I call that embrace the supermarket test. I said reject the Christian test, embrace the supermarket test. That is, if you can go to the grocery store, the supermarket as I call it in England, with your person that you're dating and still have fun, then I think there's a great likelihood that you're going to be able to have a long time dating and maybe even have a future together.
I think that's true because I can actually remember times that Amy and I have gone to the store together and we're totally dorks. There's this one time, I actually have a video of her, there's the background music going and she did I think it was an NSYNC dance to it. We were joking around and then sometimes we'll hum or whistle and she harmonizes with me because we're total nerds, music nerds. Anyway, so we have a good time.
Because if you do end up getting married, that's what your life's going to be like.
It is.
You're doing
You're
boring, menial things together. And so if you can't have fun doing boring, menial things together when you're dating, then...
That's so huge. I think it's the friendship, really, is what you're after. And I remember when Amy and I were dating, Timothy Keller, he did a great talk on a lot of this stuff. And he talked about the 4 loves that C.S. Lewis talked about. We love C.S. Lewis around here. But he was talking about how that friendship and that kinship love, the companionship, is so huge that actually, even in the formation of man and woman in the Genesis account, it talks about that there may be a helper suitable to Adam. And that word helper, really at the core of it, is somebody that's going to come alongside you as a friend. And that compatibility piece and that friendship piece, that's really what's going to stand the test of time. I mean, our looks are going to change, our interests and all these other things are going to change about us, and we're going to have to go through and weather a lot of things together in a marriage. So why not be best friends with your spouse?
That's great. All right, here's one. How far is too far? And you guys know what I'm talking about. How far is too far?
Well, there is a big trend. We were talking about this before we got here, talking about the I Kissed Dating Goodbye and the Dateable, and those were big books. The Christian purity culture was really big, especially in the U.S. I'm guessing it was similar in the UK.
Not really, but
really?
Anyway.
Yeah.
But how far is too far?
Well, the way that they answered that was basically, when I Kissed Dating Goodbye, it was don't kiss until your wedding day.
Yeah.
And I know just hearing from people who kind of weathered through that season of the church, that's been really hard on them, that purity culture. They've kind of looked back on their lives and gone, wow, that was legalistic, that really had a negative impact. Some of the marriages didn't last as a result. The guy who wrote that book, his marriage and his faith at this point, which is really sad, have not lasted. So I think we have to be careful on this one, is what I'm going to say. Let's not get too legalistic.
So you're throwing it over to
I'm
Julie.
going to throw it over to Julie to answer
actual
all the
answer.
real things.
Yeah. It's a very nuanced question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I need to toss my phone. Making real life. So I think that it's a very nuanced question. I think that there is a trend for us to live into these like pendulum swings of like one extreme or the other, and obviously something in the middle is where I think is most appropriate for us to live. Obviously, there are very clear biblical mandates on physical relationships that are reserved for within a marriage. So there is a definite too far within that. You can find it in Exodus 20 and the 10 Commandments. And so you have that piece, but then I think that it's very important that our identity is found in Christ and that we are reflecting what it looks like to be a follower of Christ in our physical relationships with others. I think that the danger is to forget that, and that's where we end up being compromised. And I know that, being further out from dating and being able to think back to things that happened in relationships, you hold all that with you in the future, even if it's just kissing somebody or holding their hand. And so I think that weighing that is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say, if you have, by your own definition, you feel you've gone too far, then there's nothing that Jesus can't heal.
That's
there's
right.
nothing that Jesus can't restore. There's no reason that would prevent or preclude you from being happily in a relationship with someone else at some point in the future. So just to say there's nothing that can put you far away from God's love. God's love can reach you whatever you've done.
And there's nothing that Jesus can't redeem.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He can take those relationships and take us and do something amazing.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about from my own experience, some kind of real hard advice that I got given, which kind of beat me around the head, was if you are, and this was to me, and I was struggling with viewing pornography, that taking that into a relationship with another person can end up damaging them, because it rewires your mind. It teaches you to treat people as objects. It gives you certain expectations of what physical intimacy should look like. And so the advice I was given was, figure that out. If you're struggling with that, get help. There is help out there. We have help here at Chapel Hill. Celebrate Recovery is an awesome place to come and deal with issues like that. But get that stuff figured out before you bring that into a relationship with someone else and drag them in with you. So that was another thing I was thinking about. Any last things you guys want to say about dating?
Oh my gosh, I am so glad that I'm not on the dating scene anymore. I just think about the introduction of social media. Yeah. That was not a thing when I got married. Dating apps, I think that eHarmony had just come out when I started dating, and so navigating that world, I can't imagine, and it seems like a whole new world out there. So I feel like even talking about it now, I'm it's almost like a different language for me.
Yeah. Well, I would just say, circling back to something you said earlier, Ellis, is that singleness for Christians, this is one of the beautiful things about Christians or Christianity, is that there is a grace gift for living the single life. And if you feel like you are called to singleness, that is a good and beautiful and wonderful thing. And God wants to take and use and mold you just as much as the married person. Yeah. And I remember one of the churches I was part of, I was single, when I was working in the church, and there were several meetings where I was dogged on for being unmarried. Well, you'll learn this when you're married. You'll learn this when you have kids, and you'll really understand and value this at that point. And I took that to note. And now that I'm married, I go, well, actually, I don't think all that much has changed. Like, certainly, it's a wonderful institution. My wife is amazing. I love her. She's the most important person to me on the planet. And she helps me become more like Jesus, which is a wonderful and beautiful thing. But God could use me just as much and in a unique way if I hadn't gotten married. So you are not less than in this church community. Believe me, you are not less than if you are not married at this time. And if you are dating, you have a church family here that would love to just love on you and walk with you through that. So.
And I mean, on that note, Jesus never
Jesus
married.
was single.
And so if you have in your mind that I have to be married to be complete, to be fulfilled, to be anything that, I'm lacking something unless I'm married. Jesus never got married. And if there was one human being in history who never lacked anything, it was him.
That's right.
And so if you find yourself in that situation, know that you're in great company. All right, well, this has been a real privilege. You guys, thank you for sharing your thoughts and advice on that. We're going to have more videos coming out very soon. Every week we have a sermon being published. We have a live stream on Sunday morning. You can join us for our worship services, and we would love you to do that. You can subscribe and hit the bell to receive notifications, and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And if you have more questions about dating, throw them in the comments, because we could have a future video coming up with a response to some of those questions. So thank you guys, and we'll see you soon.